Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going on a trip through fact and fiction, and it's all thanks to you. You sent in some excerpts from the Illuminati, facts, myths, and conspiracy theories. And, well, it seems like you're ready to kind of unravel one of history's most enduring mysteries.
The Illuminati, they're like the celebrity gossip of secret society, short-lived, but with a legacy that just won't quit. It's amazing how they've managed to capture the imagination for centuries.
Right. Secret societies, hidden symbols, whispers of global influence.
Hmm.
It's all a bit irresistible, isn't it? There's even that whole thing about the U.S. dollar bill and its alleged Illuminati connections. I have to admit, even I get a little curious about that one.
It's a perfect example of how the idea of the Illuminati has almost transcended its actual history. But before we dive into the conspiracies, let's rewind to the beginning. What was the Illuminati?
Exactly. Let's ground ourselves in some facts first. We know they were officially founded on May 1st, 1776 in Bavaria. Kind of ironic considering what else was brewing in the world at that time.
It's almost poetic, isn't it? While the American colonists were fighting for freedom and throwing off the shackles of monarchy in Bavaria, you had this group of intellectuals pushing for very similar ideals: reason, science, individual liberty.
Okay, but here's what I find really interesting. You had this group, the Illuminati, dedicated to open thinking and challenging authority, but they decide to operate in complete secrecy. They use code names, hidden rituals, the works. It seems a little contradictory, don't you think?
That's one of the most fascinating aspects of the Illuminati story. You have to consider the context of the time. These were dangerous ideas. Adam Weishaupt, the founder, was a law professor who saw the power structures of the church and the monarchy as obstacles to progress.
So it's like they felt they had to be secretive to protect themselves and their ideas. But wasn't that secrecy also what made them so vulnerable to suspicion and ultimately led to their downfall?
Exactly. Their methods, while understandable in the context of the time, ultimately backfired. They infiltrated other groups like the Freemasons, which only fueled paranoia about their true intentions. By the mid-1780s, they were seen as a legitimate threat to the state.
And that's when the hammer came down in 1785. Duke Karl Theodor of Bavaria officially outlawed the Illuminati. Weishaupt was exiled. And just like that, a group that barely lasted a decade vanished from the historical stage. Or did they?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because while the historical record tells us the Illuminati were dissolved, their story doesn't end there. Their disappearance only served to amplify the mystery, setting the stage for the rise of the Illuminati myth.
And that's where things get really interesting, because whether or not the original group survived, their legacy has taken on a life of its own. The Illuminati have become this symbol, this almost mythical representation of hidden power and conspiracy.
It's like the ultimate what if, right? What if this group dedicated to reason and enlightenment was forced underground, becoming the very thing they sought to challenge?
Okay, I'm definitely hooked now. So
Right.
before we delve into the world of conspiracy theories, let's take a closer look at some of those symbols that have become so closely associated with the Illuminati.
The all-seeing eye, the pyramid, these symbols have become almost synonymous with the Illuminati, even though they predate the group by centuries. It's incredible how they've been reinterpreted and woven into the larger narrative.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I mean, we see these symbols everywhere, but what did they actually mean to the original Illuminati? And how did they take on this whole new life in the world of conspiracy theories? Let's unpack that next.
Okay, let's talk symbols. It's like a game of visual telephone, isn't it? Symbols get passed down through time, their meanings morphing and evolving. You mentioned the all-seeing eye and the pyramid. Those are definitely Illuminati 101, right? But they didn't exactly invent those symbols, did they?
Not at all. The all-seeing eye, for example, goes way back. You see it in ancient Egyptian iconography, Renaissance art, even religious imagery. It often represents divine providence, a watchful God keeping an eye on humanity. So it's interesting how the Illuminati, a group focused on reason and enlightenment, adopted a symbol with such strong religious connotations. What did the all-seeing eye represent to them?
For the Illuminati, it was less about a divine being and more about the power of knowledge. It symbolized the eye of reason, the ability to see through superstition and ignorance. It's fascinating how a symbol's meaning can shift so drastically depending on who's using it and in what context.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that symbols are powerful, but their interpretations can be very subjective. Now, what about the pyramid? That one feels even more loaded, especially with its connection to the U.S. dollar bill. I mean, was Benjamin Franklin secretly an Illuminati member or something?
Now that's where things get really interesting. The pyramid itself as a symbol has been around for millennia, The ancient Egyptians obviously used it extensively, and it often represents hierarchy, power structures, the striving for something higher.
Right. And on the dollar bill, we have that unfinished pyramid with the all-seeing eye hovering above it.
Uh-huh.
That's the image that really fuels those New World Order conspiracy theories, right?
Yeah. Exactly, the New World Order is this idea of a secret group or cabal working to establish a global government, often with nefarious intentions. The unfinished pyramid on the dollar bill has become a symbol for this alleged conspiracy, with the separate capstone representing the Illuminati pulling the strings from above.
Okay, so we have these pre-existing symbols, the all-seeing eye and the pyramid, that were adopted by the Illuminati and then later appropriated by conspiracy theorists to represent something entirely different. It's like a symbolic game of historical Mad Libs.
It really is. And then you add in the element of secret rituals, which just adds more fuel to the conspiracy fire. Like many societies, especially secret ones, the Illuminati had initiation rites and ceremonies we don't know much about them, which of course makes them perfect fodder for speculation.
It's like the old saying, nature abhors a vacuum when there's a lack of information. Our imaginations tend to fill in the blanks, often with the most dramatic or sensational possibilities. And when you combine that with symbols that already carry a lot of weight and mystery, well, it's no wonder the Illuminati becomes such a popular subject for conspiracy theories.
Absolutely. It plays into this very human desire to find patterns and explanations even where they might not exist. We're drawn to stories, to narratives that help us make sense of the world, especially when it feels chaotic or unpredictable.
So the Illuminati, with their cloak of secrecy and their powerful symbols, become this perfect blank slate onto which we can project our fears and anxieties about control, power, and the unknown. It's almost like a psychological Rorschach test, isn't it?
Yeah.
People see what they want to see in the Illuminati.
Precisely. And that brings us to the heart of it all. The conspiracy theories themselves, we've talked about the historical context, the symbolism. Now let's explore the narratives that have sprung up around the Illuminati, from shadowy cabals controlling world events to elaborate plots for global domination.
Yes, let's dive into that rabbit hole. I'm curious to hear your take on some of the most common Illuminati conspiracy theories, especially those that have gained traction in popular culture.
Well, one of the most persistent theories is that the Illuminati never really went away. They simply went deeper underground, becoming even more powerful and influential.
Right, so instead of being disbanded in 1785, they supposedly orchestrated their own demise as a way to avoid scrutiny and operate with even more secrecy. And from this hidden position, they're supposedly manipulating governments, banks, the media, basically controlling the world from behind the scenes.
Exactly. It's a classic conspiracy theory narrative. The idea that everything is connected, orchestrated by a small group with a sinister agenda. It plays on our fears of being controlled, of forces beyond our comprehension dictating the course of our lives.
It's fascinating how these ideas take root and spread. I mean, is there any evidence to support these claims of Illuminati involvement in world affairs? Or is it purely speculation and conjecture?
There's a lot of speculation for sure, but very little in the way of concrete evidence. These theories often rely on circumstantial evidence, coincidences, and interpretations of symbols that are open to multiple meanings. It's like connecting dots that may or may not actually be related.
It reminds me of that say, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If you're predisposed to believe in a grand conspiracy, you're more likely to interpret events through that lens, even if there are simpler or more logical explanations.
Exactly. And then you have the influence of pop culture, which has taken the Illuminati and run wild with it. We see references in movies, music, even celebrity gossip. It's become this shorthand for hidden power and shadowy influence, a way to explain away anything that seems mysterious or out of the ordinary.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the Illuminati has become this cultural meme detached from their historical origins and transformed into this all-encompassing symbol of conspiracy. But let's be honest, it's also kind of fun to entertain these ideas, right? I mean, who doesn't love a good conspiracy theory every now and then?
I think there's a part of us that enjoys the thrill of the unknown, the possibility that there might be something more going on beneath the surface. It's like a mental puzzle trying to decipher the true meaning behind events.
But it's important to remember that there's a difference between playful speculation and actually believing that these theories are true. We have to be careful not to let our imaginations run away with us and always be willing to question our own biases and assumptions.
That's a crucial point. Critical thinking is essential, especially when dealing with information that's so heavily laden with speculation and conjecture. So before we get too lost in the world of conspiracy, let's take a step back and try to separate fact from fiction. What do we actually know about the Illuminati based on historical evidence? And what's purely speculation?
Yes, let's do some debunking time to put on our skeptical hats and see what holds up under scrutiny. Okay, so debunking time, we've explored the myths, the symbols, all the juicy conspiracy theories, but now let's sort of step back and separate fact from fiction. What can we actually say with certainty about the Illuminati based on what we've learned?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is that the Bavarian Illuminati, the group founded by Adam Weishaupt, was a real organization. They existed, they had goals, and they ultimately met their end all within a very short time frame.
Yeah, it's so easy to get lost in the whole mythology and forget that they were a real group, a product of a very specific time and place. 18th century Bavaria, a world kind of teetering on the edge of massive social and political upheaval.
Exactly. Weishaupt and his followers, they were intellectuals who genuinely believed in the power of reason and enlightenment to challenge the existing order. They wanted to reform society. But their methods, particularly their reliance on secrecy and infiltration, well, it backfired.
And that's a crucial point, I think. Even if their intentions were noble or, well-meaning,
Okay.
their methods made them vulnerable to suspicion and ultimately led to their downfall. Good intentions don't always guarantee good outcomes, right?
Absolutely. And when it comes to the grand conspiracy theories, the idea that the Illuminatis are still operating today, pulling the strings of global events, there's just no credible evidence to support those claims.
So as much fun as it is to speculate, we have to acknowledge that the historical evidence points to a very different story. A group of intellectuals with radical ideas who ultimately failed to achieve their goals.
Precisely. But even though the original Illuminati are long gone, their legacy continues to fascinate us. Why do you think that is? Why do these conspiracy theories have such staying power even centuries later?
I think it speaks to something very human, it's very basic human desire for clear answers in a world that's often confusing and chaotic. Conspiracy theories offer a sense of order, a way to make sense of events that might otherwise seem random or just completely inexplicable.
It's comforting to believe that there's a plan, even a sinister one, rather than accept the possibility that sometimes things just happen that maybe no one is in control.
It's like that feeling you get when you're watching a magician. It's an illusion, but you still can't help but wonder how they pulled it off. Conspiracy theories tap into that same sense of wonder and mystery.
And the Illuminati, with their history of secrecy, their, evocative symbols, and their connection to ideas like the New World Order, they make the perfect, characters for these narratives.
They're almost like fictional characters at this point. You could project your own hopes or fears onto them, creating stories that reflect your own worldview.
Absolutely. But I think there's also something valuable to be learned from the story of the real Illuminati, the historical group, even in their failure. They highlight the enduring power of ideas.
Right, their ideas about reason, science, individual freedom, those are still relevant today, maybe even more so in our current world.
Their legacy isn't about global domination or shadowy figures. It's about critical thinking, questioning authority, and working towards a more just and equitable world.
And in a way, isn't that what the original Illuminati wanted? To encourage debate and challenge the status quo to get people to think for themselves.
Perhaps that's the greatest irony of all the Illuminati. A group that thrived on secrecy has ultimately left behind a legacy of openness and critical inquiry.
It's a powerful reminder that even in failure, ideas can have a lasting impact, and that sometimes the most significant changes start with a whisper, a challenge to the established order, a spark of enlightenment in a world that can feel very dark.
What a journey this has been. We've covered history symbols, psychology, pop culture, all through the lens of this one enigmatic group, the Illuminati.
It just goes to show that sometimes the most captivating stories are the ones that blend fact and fiction, leaving us with questions that linger long after the story is over.
So, listener, what are your thoughts? What stood out to you the most in our exploration of the Illuminati? Did this deep dive make you rethink any of your own assumptions? Did it inspire you to dig a little deeper and question the narratives that we're so often presented with?
We hope this deep dive has given you some new insights and maybe even sparked your own curiosity about the world. Remember, the quest for knowledge is a journey, and it's often the questions, not the answers, that lead to the most fascinating discoveries.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exploration of the intriguing and the unexpected. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep seeking the truth wherever it may lead.
And that's our deep dive for today. A big thanks to all of you for listening, and remember, keep sending in your suggestions, because you never know what we'll deep dive into